What's cracking, everybody? You're back. It's Mr. Berger, and tonight we're going to be taking a look at this cool cannon cart Goison graveyard deck. Did I say that right? Yeah, cannon cart Goison graveyard. You got the giant poison combo, which makes it a Goison deck. You got two win conditions because you got the giant and you got the graveyard. And then you've got that awesome cannon cart, which was recently buffed. And the cannon cart has seen a little bit of love here and there, and it was seen used more kind of in higher end trophy counts, kind of only in the pro scene, very underused in most lower trophy counts. But since the buff, you're seeing it everywhere, and it's definitely a very effective card in a lot of decks, and it's found its way into a lot of decks as kind of a range support card. It's got some interesting utility. In fact, I posted a thing on Reddit not too long ago, got a couple thousand views, on how if it dies, there was a balloon. There's an example that I gave in a video where the cannon cart actually ran in and died, and then the enemy balloon went backwards away from my tower towards the cannon cart, which is now a cannon because it went into its second form, right? It becomes a building and attracts it. So it has all these cool, interesting interactions, and that allowed me to just completely shut down that balloon, you know, with almost no elixir spent, no extra elixir spent. So that cannon cart in there is definitely a huge feature of this deck. But, you know, you're mostly going on with that kind of Goison and graveyard combination to just completely obliterate their towers when possible. So, let's talk about how I found this deck and some strategies that I use to play this deck, and let me share them with you guys. So, I found this deck on Royale API, which is kind of the thing that I've been using a lot lately. Really quickly, look at that graveyard there used on defense. Very versatile card, although you generally see it on offense. So I found this deck online on Royale API, and is this the point where this is the thing that I put on Reddit right there. Look, the cannon cart dies, balloon goes completely backwards towards that cannon cart, and then the ice wizard just completely shuts it down. You can see that I'm hovering over the tornado, but there's really no need to use it there because the cannon cart did an excellent job of pulling it away. Alright, so now that you know where I found this deck and we saw that really cool interaction, let's go into the strategies of this deck. So, this deck is currently very meta. I've seen it around quite a bit. I've seen some pros playing it for sure, and I found it online, and I think that you could probably find some TV Royale replays with it, or at least there have been some recently. Anyway, it's got that deadly combination of the giant and the poison, so it's got the Goison. And as I mentioned before, that's your one win condition, and the graveyard is also a secondary win condition, so you got two win conditions. And on top of that, you can kind of combo them because you send the giant in first, and then you send the graveyard in around it, right? And once it's tanking for that graveyard, because the giant's so beefy and has so much HP, then the graveyard just spawns you into skeletons and completely obliterates it. Alright, on top of that, you got some other cool cards in there. You got the Ice Wizard, and you got the Cannon Cart, and Mega Minion, just generally powerful cards. Ice Wizard isn't that strong, but it fits in this deck really well, and I'll talk about that more in detail in a little bit here. Alright, so oftentimes the graveyard in this deck, right, it isn't used until late game, and you can see there, I used it on defense earlier, but it's this kind of late push here that allowed me to take out that tower there. So let's go ahead and move on to the next replay here. So, oftentimes you're not going to use it until double elixir or late in the game. Sometimes you only need that one successful push to go in and get like an amazing push off and win. You can play like hard defense most of the game and then just get one successful counter push, send your giant in and the graveyard in, and then put the poison on top of it to clear out whatever they have, and all of a sudden their tower just melts. The graveyard does a ton of damage if it's left alone, if it has something tanking for it, if they don't counter it properly, all of the above. So it's super deadly. And it's really hard to completely shut down all the time, especially when you got something tanking for it. So, likeliness has it, it'll get a little bit of damage off each time if you use it successfully. And so you can definitely slowly but surely chip away and get chunks of damage off of their tower and win the game doing that. Or you can just get that one massive push at the end of the game or in double elixir and catch them off guard. So consider using it as like a surprise card too, kind of like a poison, or not a poison, sorry, like a freeze or a clone or something like that, or a heal. You use it as kind of like a surprise, and all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, I don't have anything to counter that heal in hand, and my tower's dead. So in this case, that's kind of what you do with the graveyard, in some scenarios, if you decide to play it that way. In other cases, you're just going to go for, you know, graveyard after graveyard to get that chip damage off, as I mentioned earlier, and slowly but surely take out their tower. Alright, the graveyard, as you saw earlier, can also be used on defense, and I just want to point that out again. You saw earlier, rewind if you need to, that it was used on that P.E.K.K.A. You successfully completely shut it down, or at least bought a lot of time, because it does spawn a bunch of skeletons, and it spawns them over time. So even if they like zap the first 5 skeletons, you're going to get a few more after that. So the P.E.K.K.A.s, you know, running to this one, and then that one, and then this one, and then that one. The only thing that completely counters it is a poison, so they'll have to invest in a poison on top of that graveyard, on top of their P.E.K.K.A. You know what I mean? If they want to. So yeah, definitely you can use it on defense. The cannon cart. I talked about it a lot already, but just really quickly, it's extremely strong and meta right now, and you can see why in these replays. The Mega Minion, it's just kind of a really solid all-around card. It was nerfed. It was nerfed not too long ago, but it wasn't nerfed so hard that you don't want to see it, or you don't want to use it anymore and you don't see it anymore, right? It was nerfed just really slightly. It was like 3% damage nerf or something like that, something really minor like that. So it's still really strong, only costs 3, lives through Fireball, you know, does a bunch of damage to support, does a bunch of damage to tanks, so on and so forth. So it's just a really solid card in a lot of decks. You got a ton of defense because you got the Tornado and you got the Tombstone. And the Tornado can be used on offense and defense. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the future here, but first let's talk about the Ice Wizard. So the Tornado, you can use it on defense to counter like hogs, hold a hog in to activate your King Tower, so on and so forth, or you can counter a hog or a giant or something like that with your Tombstone in the center there. Now the Tornado of course synergizes really well with the Ice Wizard because Ice Wizard has that splash damage, and so you can pull everything in with the Tornado, and then the Ice Wizard splashes them and does damage to all of the things in the center of the Tornado and also slows them all down. So it goes really well with the Splash Yard theme. That being said, let's talk about the Tornado a little bit more. You can actually use the Tornado not only on defense, like I said earlier, you can also use it on offense to pull everything, all of their units, into their own Princess Tower, allowing all your units, especially your splash damage units, in this case that's mostly just your Ice Wizard, right, to cleave their tower and also hit all the units at once. Focuses fire on that tower as well. Alright guys, let's go ahead and talk about some opening moves here. So ideally, your best opening move is you're going to want a Tombstone. So Tombstone in the center is a very ideal starting move, and you can see that there. You don't usually use defensive structures as an opener, but spawner buildings are very common openers, and in this case it's your Tombstone. The Tombstone is a unique spawner building because it only makes skeletons and it only costs 3 and it spawns 4 of them on death. So it has a different utility than most spawner buildings. You don't use it to provide a bunch of chip damage like a goblin hut or a steady wave of troops like a barbarian hut, or you know, annoying little fire spirits like the furnace. It's there as more of like a defensive utility thing, but it's a good opener because it provides that steady stream of skeletons, which kind of gives you a little bit of defense on one lane, and it also will counter whatever hog or giant they might send in at the bridge. So not at all a bad opener. If you don't have the Tombstone, you could cycle like the Ice Wizard, the Mega Minion, or maybe even the Giant or the Cannon Cart in the back. I would generally go with like the Ice Wizard would be my ideal cycle card because it's cheap, it's slow, it's a good defensive unit. You know what I mean? It's not too risky to use it. You're not like wasting anything huge if you use it. Cannon Cart's a little bit speedier, Giant's a bigger investment, but these are all options if you don't have anything else. Ultimately, of course, you could play defense and try to counter and go for a big, you know, like hang on to your cards and then go for a big defensive play and then turn that into a counter push. But I'm one that does not like to leak elixir at all, and that's just my personal play style. You can see an interesting use of the graveyard there. Probably not the best usage of it. I was trying to counter his mortar, but look at the... oh man, look at that Dark Goblin just completely shutting it down. That's terrible on my part. So anyway, well, like I was saying, for opening moves, you could just save your elixir, wait to see what they play and counter, but I'm one that likes to cycle cards in the back and at least kind of get the battle going. Depending on what deck you're playing, that can be beneficial or not so beneficial, because it gets you closer to double elixir time, so that can be good for heavier decks, or you know, decks that can kind of play into that double elixir time well. But if you're playing a deck that shines in single elixir time, then that's not necessarily the best move. I personally just like to get the fight going, so I don't like to do that, but it's an option. Alright guys, let's do card replacements really quickly, and then we will just look at this last replay and call it a video. So what I see in this deck is there's definitely a theme of Splash Yard. So the Tombstone could probably go for another spawner or something like that, but I don't know, you could probably put just pretty much anything in there. It feels kind of funky to me to have the Tombstone and the Tornado, but that makes it a very defensive deck. So maybe like a Goblin Hut or some other cheap, maybe a cannon, something cheap like that. Or just another 3-cost, you know, unit like a Royal Ghost or something. For the Mega Minion, you could always do like Minions or something like that, but Mega Minion's a really solid, reliable card. For the giant, it's really big in this deck, but you could put like a Valkyrie or an Ice Golem, you know, kind of like a mini tank there. For the tornado, it would really change the deck, so I wouldn't replace anything. Poison, you can always do like a fireball, but the poison and graveyard and giant go really well together. For the cannon cart, you could go for another range support card like a musketeer. Same thing with the ice wizard, you could get like a musketeer or an executioner would work really well with the tornado. If you're going to replace the graveyard, that would unfortunately completely change the deck, so put another major win condition in there, but you might want to change some of the other cards if you're going to change that. Alright guys, that is it for this Goison cannon cart graveyard deck. Thanks so much for watching to the end, I always appreciate it. Leave any comments if you have any suggestions or questions in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching guys, and have a good night.